Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Association of Graduates and Air Force Academy Foundation special presentation. My name is Joshua Reese, and I will be your host for tonight's panel. I am a 2018 graduate, and I am currently managing my own branding company called To the Stars Media. This afternoon, I will be joined by four panelists, and we will share our experience and our personal journey in consumer goods and brand management, and answer any questions that you all may have. First, let me introduce the other panelists. First, we have Ms. Katie Dixon, class of 1988, and is currently on the board of directors at Black Rifle Coffee Company and Fixed Steel Furniture. Next, we have Mr. Greg Johnson, class of 1990. He's the executive vice president and GM of Intuit and a member of Qualcomm board of directors. Next, we have Mr. Rod Little, class of 1992. He is currently serving as the president and CEO at Edgewell Personal Care. And lastly, Mr. Brett Lucas, class of 1997. And he is the director of e-commerce fulfillment at PepsiCo. So now we have a list of questions, and we can start off with the panel a general question. And the question is, why is brand management so important?
I'm happy to kick off on that one. Hey, welcome everyone. It's so great to know that there are so many Air Force Academy folks, alums, current students that are interested in brand management. So thank you for having us, first of all. And great first question, why brand management? Why does it even need to exist? And I would say, my quick answer to that is that when you look at what is a brand is a promise to consumers. So if you see Cheerios, it is making a promise to consumers that it will be made from whole grain oats and sustainable practices, and down the line help lower your cholesterol. And as a brand manager and in the field of brand management, what you're trying to do is make sure that you are always positioning your brand for relevance with the consumer. So you have to ask yourself constantly, why should consumers choose your brand? And what job is your brand doing that's different from others? And so that connection between what consumers need and want, which does change over time, and your brand, you are the one in the middle that is creating that connection. And that's why brand management is important and exists. Do any of my colleagues want to add something?
That was excellent, Katie.
Yeah, Greg, I would just add, it takes years to build a brand, right? It's lots of hard work and good work every day to have the brand resonate with consumers. And in one event or one instance, you can destroy, what's taken years to build it. You can destroy something much quicker than you can build it. And the company that I'm in, we're a publicly traded company worth about $2.5 billion equity value right now. And the bulk of the value of the company is in the value of the brands. It's not the hard assets or any physical thing that we have around, infrastructure. It's the value of the brands, the actual soft, intangible asset value of those brands that have been created over time. And so from a pure financial outcome, it's important to do it well, because that's typically what drives the biggest value in a company.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go into the next question. So Katie, this is for you. So the question is, you have led multiple marketing campaigns for brands like Pillsbury, Betty Crocker, and American Girl, and have had great success with those campaigns. What was your favorite marketing campaign, and what was the key factor to your achievements?
Oh, great question, and thanks for asking it. My favorite campaign was in 2019. I was president of American Girl. You all probably know American Girl for the books and the dolls and the stores. And the situation was that we call them tween girls. It means they're between being a girl and a teenager, so age 7 to 12. Tween girls loved American Girl, tons of pull and love of the brand. But there was a segment of moms who felt like, you know what? any doll will do. She's just going to play with it. Why is this really so important to go with American Girl? And so we needed to put together an ad campaign that helped mom understand the value of what she was buying with American Girl that wasn't just any other doll. So I want to show you the campaign, and then I'll give you another little insight into it. So were people in the audience able to hear the audio on that? If somebody could just tell me yay or nay. There was no audio at my end, so I'm trying to figure out, maybe Rachel, if others could hear it.
Katie, I could not hear either.
Okay. Well, if you didn't hear it, let me tell you what it was about. Basically, we are repositioning American Girl in mom's mind from that looks like an expensive doll. That's kind of the common belief. And instead, we explain how investing in an American Girl is an investment in your girl, because we tell your girl stories with examples of girls that exhibit strong character. They all have challenges, and the world is not always kind. But we, American Girl, can support you, mom, in teaching you, your girls, the important life lessons through the books and the characters. And then the girls play out these stories of girls that are strong and brave and kind. So in a world where mom has to tell, and feels like she's preaching at her daughter all the time, this is a chance to welcome in stories that do that, but the stories are told from the point of view of a 9-year-old. And they are stories in history, they are stories that are contemporary. They very much hit the mark with girls in terms of meeting them where they are. And that's why this is my favorite campaign is, for me, the consumer is always number one. If you can meet them where they are and help solve a problem for them, or at least be on their side in supporting solving an issue. Here, the issue as girls grow up, they lose confidence in their abilities. Sometimes they don't want to do STEM. Sometimes we tell stories where girls overcome that and encourage girls to be their very best. So it was a thrill for me, and we'll talk more, I'm sure, later on. But if you have a chance to hear the video, you'll see that it really is, it's not a loud advertisement. It's not shouting. It is soft and supportive, and it was incredibly impactful.
Thank you, Katie, for the insightful answer. That was awesome. Mr. Rod, the next question is for you. As the CEO of Edgewell Personal Care, why is it important for you to manage a people-first organization and allowing everyone in the company to have a voice?
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for the question. A good question. Katie, I have 2 girls. Both of them were big American Girl doll fans. We hit Chicago and Los Angeles along the way. So consumers that bought the brand promise there. But no, by way of background, I graduated in '92. Was systems acquisition for 5 years, and then was at Procter & Gamble for 17 years. So a great brand building company. and a company that was really about people being the most important asset in the company. I felt that way in the Air Force as well. And, you know, I go back and look at my experiences, and what's interesting about the Air Force and Procter and Gamble is they're both promote from within companies. So you're not going to be the next general officer unless you've come up through the ranks, right? And they don't go outside and get headhunters to bring generals in. Same with Procter and Gamble. The CEO, the executive leadership team, all the way down, have come up, you know, from the bottom up, and that's all around investing in the people and training and developing the next generation of leaders. So as I came into Edgewell and took over as the CEO position, it's a lot of the basic lessons, you know, learned around motivating people. We have roughly 6,000 people in the company, 4,000 in manufacturing, 2,000 non-manufacturing spread across the world. And there's some timeless principles. So one of the things that I did first was create a values-based culture and a values-based company with the leading value is being people first. Just really simple. We're going to put people first in everything we do. And as part of that, it's selfish from a business perspective, because if you can get people feeling like they belong, like they fit with the company, they bring their very best every day, they're highly engaged, you just get a better outcome. And so again, I go back to some of the lessons I learned at the academy and some of the great leaders that I worked for in my early days in the Air Force. My first boss was a guy named Tim Harris, you know, a super guy that I learned a lot from. And so the other part of just getting people engaged and being people oriented is you've got to make people be comfortable. To your question about everyone having a voice, our third value is listen up, speak up. So be a good listener. But if you have a point of view, say it. And don't be afraid to share your point of view, regardless of where you sit in the organization in terms of level, geography. And so that's a culture piece we tried to bring, and I think that applies really to anywhere that's thinking about consumer products, technology, brand management. You need people to bring their best every day. It's a super competitive world, and if you're not, someone's going to be beating you on those points. And so this people first idea is a big one for us.
Thanks, Rob, for your insight. So the next question is for Greg. As an operations research major and being part of marketing teams for well-known companies like Procter & Gamble, Best Buy, Advance Auto Parts, why is market research so important, and what metrics do you prioritize as a brand manager?
Hey, Josh. Hey, thanks for having me today. What a privilege it is. You know, there's the way I like to think about it is there's the job of being a brand manager, and then there's the role a brand manager can play in your enterprise. And I think of the role as being broader than the job. And the role is more of, think of it as the chief architect of both your short and long-term growth, your growth strategy for your business. You know, at the heart of that, I think research is the heart of your decision support system. You know, and so with that in mind, how do you make decisions that appropriately balance the short and long term? How do you make decisions that continues to build total brand value and enterprise value? The things I care deeply about from a metric standpoint would be think of all of your, I call them your funnel metrics. Everything from your awareness to consideration to trial to retention. All those metrics are very important to understand in terms of your customer audience. Equity attributes and performance attributes, understanding the strength of your equity, how to build equity over time, because with that, you start to drive more increasing relevance for the future. In service brands, I think it's important you think about net promoter scores. Understanding your people that are your promoters versus your detractors, and understand importantly, what insights can you glean from them, people that love your experience and willing to tell others about your experience. That's an important aspect of driving your growth strategy. And the other thing is your elasticity of your brand. How far can you extend your brand into different categories? Because ultimately, your brand becomes your growth engine. And your ability to extend the brand and build increasing relevance for more jobs, as Katie said earlier, is really the most important aspect of developing a long-term sustainable growth strategy. So, as relates to what are the things I pay most attention to in metrics, there's a lot of them because the job is exhilarating, it's challenging, it's tough, and you have to balance both the short and long term.
Awesome. So the next question is for Brett. As the director of e-commerce fulfillment at PepsiCo, what impact did you see during the pandemic, and what do you think is the future of e-commerce? Brett, I don't think we can hear you. I think you're still on mute. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. No, Josh, I'm humbled to have been here today, and just thanks for hosting us. And Katie, Rod, Greg, wow. I mean, I'm loving your experiences and hearing about the different things, and just thanks for representing our academy so well as well. But I'm also representing PepsiCo, as you mentioned, Josh, and this is a great company. And my road here is a little bit different than a brand manager would be. I'm on the supply chain side, as you mentioned, in distribution. I've been at PepsiCo now 15 years, so my gray hair has come with PepsiCo. So, and as you talk about branding and your personal brand, as you go into your careers, the Fountain of Youth is using an old picture for those that saw the propaganda, if you will, out there. I had darker hair in that. Just like we learned in Siri, don't believe everything that you read or see. But so back to the question at hand here about the pandemic and e-commerce. And I would just tell you firsthand, the last 16, 17 months have absolutely changed the CPG e-commerce space. And CPG is the consumer packaged goods, which PepsiCo has numerous brands. And one reason that I love working for PepsiCo is the brands that you love that I can participate with. We have over $22 billion brands in themselves on annual revenue. But in this last year, the acceleration of e-commerce for grocery shopping in the channel has accelerated more than 5 years from where we were prior to the pandemic in 2019, coming into early Q1 last year. The acceleration of people moving and consumers moving into the channel, we are still experiencing double-digit growth in our volume and revenue for lapping last year, which in the March, April time was just a very, very high peak for e-commerce to that date, and we're still lapping those numbers today. So as we look into the future, we just need to continue going, how do we challenge the brick and mortar space as the traditional grocery shopping in different channels, including our mass channel? And I'll use Target as just one example of this big change. And I'm picking Target over some other customers that we love at PepsiCo, simply because one of the supply chain leaders there is one of my classmates who was an OR major at the academy. But in Target, if you're not familiar with it, you can go on the app and look at the different ways to purchase. And prior to the pandemic, Target had just completed an acquisition with a company called Shipt on how to get products to go to market. And that was a home delivery type system, much like an Uber or some other ways to go to market. And many in the industry said that was a bad purchase by Target. However, coming out of the pandemic, you now see Shipt as being one of those ways on the app that you can order. You can order for in-store pickup. You can order for home delivery via Shipt. You can order for ship to home from one of their warehouses. You can shop in their store. So the app has created a new experience that we haven't seen in the past, that just accelerated in the past year that we hadn't seen prior. And from a brand perspective, we just need to focus, for us, integrating with the Target apps of the world, is we need to make sure that we're high on the search. We're high in the imaging. We're high so that the brand recognition there for us, whether it be in the app or the website, But the other piece is a quick click to purchase. So within the app, that you're in the shopping basket that we could purchase. And not only that, we need to be, from a supply chain bias side, we need to be in stock on the shelf. If we're not in stock, then that Shipt driver or the Target shopper is going to substitute our product out for another competitor product, and we'll lose our basket space. So in the past year, the pandemic has just truly accelerated how e-commerce grocery is changing, how the consumer behavior is changing. And as I mentioned, it is sticking. It's no longer just for the urban apartment where they don't want to carry their Gatorade or Aquafina case up 3 flights of stairs, as early adopters of e-commerce grocery was. It's now becoming into every home and every zip code in America. And it's, frankly, it's here to stay.
Thanks, Brett, for your insight. So the next question is for me, and I just want to say thank you so much to the Air Force Academy Foundation and the Association of Graduates for selecting me to be a moderator and being on this panel. Being so junior in age and being in the space with all these brilliant minds, truly humbling. I thank you so much. So the question is, what was your motivation to become an entrepreneur and start your own branding agency, and what has been my greatest challenge so far? So motivation to become an entrepreneur was really just about ownership, having ownership in my efforts and getting every effort that I put forth in my business, I can see direct value from. So that was a little bit of motivation. And then I started in the middle of the pandemic, and luckily for me, I was able to work from home. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And as I was finishing my MBA and taking a couple of digital marketing classes and branding courses, I saw an opportunity for me in what I'm good at. I'm young, I'm a millennial, I'm always on my phone, I'm always on social media. So I saw an opportunity to help smaller businesses with their branding on social media. And the greatest challenge so far is I know this is kind of a cliche answer, but the overall entrepreneurial culture of just starting and every day is a grind. I feel like I have 2 full-time jobs now and I'm losing a little bit of sleep, but it's so worth it. So I would say just the biggest challenge is getting my brand and my business off the ground and just continuing to push even when I'm tired or even when I'm a little, don't have as much motivation. So the next question is for all the panelists. And the question is, we all work in very competitive industries. How do we manage our competition and keeping our brands and products in the lead?
I'll be happy to jump in on that one and then look forward to the other panelists jumping in. But, you know, I would say that this kind of goes back to some things I learned at the Air Force Academy. So, you know, I was a big fan of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. I feel like I learned as much about strategy from that as anything else. And the thing that I always keep in mind is that, you know, Sun Tzu taught us that if you just go head to head with armies, you know, a lot of people are going to die and then the next wave come, and it just doesn't result in actually, it's a numbers game. Then it's just about who has more, that can take more losses. Rather, you should do a flanking move and surprise with something different. And so keeping that in mind and keeping the competition in mind, I'll give you an example. I was the brand director on Old El Paso taco shells. And, you know, it was a time when the competition, everybody was saying they were the most authentic. So everybody was trying to own the same space. We're the most authentic. We're the most authentic. And lots of reasons why they were authentic. And so we decided to use, much like Greg talked about, some data and some insights to figure out what our flanking move would be. So from an insight standpoint, from a macro standpoint, it was a time when we saw that consumers were more and more just shopping the perimeter of the store. So the vegetables, the fresh meat, the dairy, and only very occasionally went up and down a center aisle. And so we needed to figure out how to attach ourselves, Old El Paso taco shells, to this fresh consumer wave. And so we started a campaign that was called Start Somewhere Fresh. And the whole campaign was showing that if you have a fresh tomato or an avocado or a lime, whatever you've gathered that was fresh, you can turn it into a great taco meal with just the addition of Old El Paso shells and seasonings. So we sold our 2 highest margin items, attaching ourselves to the fresh goods they were already buying, and got out of the war of head-to-head authenticity and became a solution for mom when she didn't know how to pull together all of those items, and published a ton of recipes, easy food ideas on the website, which of course created the great social and digital ecosystem. And then secondly, a really tiny insight, which was when kids, we'd see them eating tacos in all of our research, all the filling fell out the back, and mom and dad would laugh and scoop it back into the tortilla. So we said to our R&D group, can you make a taco shell where the filling doesn't fall out? And they came up with, it looked like a boat. So picture there's 2 ends and a middle. This kids can put their toppings in and take bites out, and it doesn't fall out the back. So again, it was all based on the consumer insights of how can we be better, different, and more helpful to mom and families, and how can we be different, saying something different, providing a different service than the competition. So I'll hand it back to anyone else who wants to take a stab.
I would just share. So at Intuit, I manage our consumer group of brands. One brand, TurboTax, it's about a $4 billion brand and 70% market share, 90% share of the revenue in the industry. So it's a pretty big brand. So how do you grow it? What we focus in on, number one, the customer versus competition. We have to think about what are the biggest pain points our customers have, and then figure out, can we solve it well, better than anybody else? And by solving it, can we solve it in a way that creates durable competitive advantage? And we kind of look for those intersections. And so all of our growth strategy really is based upon going after consumer needs, consumer pain points, and thinking about how do we drive growth through innovation. Now, we do have a lot of commercial innovation, meaning how do we take an existing capability or product or brand or experience and think about new novel ways to either disrupt the market, in a way to leverage our capabilities and skills and our relationship with our customers in a way to create kind of, a big competitive advantage. So there's a little bit of focus on the customer versus competitors, or understand the market and look for opportunities to disrupt. And those become some of the tactics and strategies, I guess, for how we continue to grow despite a very competitive environment.
Yeah, I would just build on Katie's and Greg's comments to say that the competitive environment today is more difficult than it's ever been. Historically, if you go back pre the e-commerce trends that Brett was talking about in consumer products, all the power revolved around getting the shelf, the physical retail shelf in store, and getting good presence there and out competing your competition to be able to do that. With the internet and e-commerce coming online, that's completely changed now. So I'll just a quick example. We do a lot of men's grooming business. Our brands are Schick, Jack Black, Cremo. We've got a portfolio of brands, some that were native, started online, some that were old legacy, in store. And historically, the category used to be us and Procter & Gamble via the Gillette brand. And so today it's us, Procter & Gamble, the Gillette brand, but there were 2 brands that started up, Dollar Shave Club, some of you are probably users, and Harry's, that started online and both built, $100 plus, $200 plus $million businesses online without ever talking to a retailer. And so from our perspective, Katie's right. I mean, we try to map out everything the competition's doing and know where they are at all times, and being very strategic about how we deal with that. But how you deal with a startup that's purely transacting online as opposed to a scaled, $100 billion player who's in brick and mortar retail you do very different things to combat both of them. And it, again, old days, CPG 20 years ago, you didn't have to worry about the entrepreneurial startup who's online. Today you do, and it's a very different set in terms of how you deal with that. Some cases, if you can't beat them, you buy them, right? So there's a lot of that going on today as well.
To kind of piggyback, in the space that I'm in, I deal pretty much with small businesses. So my biggest, I guess, competitive advantage is actually showing them results through data. A lot of people who do brand management at the social media level are either photographers or don't really focus in on the data analytics. So where I really kind of set myself apart is I focus on the data. I look at all of the insights that the social media sites give us, and then I put forth tried and true marketing methods and branding methods, and then show them week by week, month by month, how their following is increasing, how their revenue is increasing, how their systems are becoming automated and integrated through their email marketing, through their website, and through their social media channels. And that's really more so my competitive advantage, is really diving deep into the numbers. Regardless of what the industry is, when a client comes to me, the first thing I ask them is, do you look at your insights from your website traffic? And then do you integrate that with your social media traffic? If we don't have any more input, we can move to the next question. And the rest of the questions are going to be for all the panelists. So whenever any of you all want to chime in, you can. The next question is, what is the key to sustainable success? In other words, how do you embrace the wins while shrugging off the losses?
Kind of building off what Brett and Rod said about e-commerce, this is the gift that keeps on giving, because you can test and learn so quickly. So my best advice is fail often, fail small, fail smartly, and then quickly redirect to the things that are working. So, you know, I sit on the board of Black Rifle Coffee Company, and we've tried lots of things that don't work. And those are all mini victories, because quite frankly, the investment in each of them is small. We can pivot, turn on a dime, and then redirect our funds towards the things that are resonating. So, you know, I would say old school, one failure, and you felt like, you know, as a CPG marketer that you kind of had lost your value, and that is not at all the case now. People want to test theories, and that's the great thing about, especially if you have a direct to consumer where you have the data, you can very quickly learn what is true and what is not, and what will work and what won't. So fail small, fail often.
Yeah, no, it's Katie, I think you're reading my notes to myself here. Is I had fail quickly, and you know, but the reality is, especially in an e-commerce world, you are going to fail, and it's that recovery time. But I can just tell you again, my perspective on brands is going to be how we've supported them, how we've run our brands. But as a supply chain operator, I learned early on, you're absolutely going to fail and you're absolutely going to lose. But, you know, how do you have success over time, I think was the original question here. But that's really just getting into the way you run your business. And that is knowing your key metrics, your KPIs, whatever they may be. So if it's on a brand site, you know, what are the impressions that you're getting? What are the different positions that you're at? What is your return on clicks and how many are clicking through, and some different things. In an operator world, it's how, you know, machine time and operating time and cost efficiency. And you have to know, really, did you win today? And if you don't know if you won today or not, you really need to get that introspective and really dive in and try to understand, one, why do you not understand? And two, if you did lose, why? And quickly get to those whys, whether it's 5 whys or whatever it may be, so that you can be positioned to win again tomorrow. And then when you get up tomorrow, measure yourself, measure those key metrics, and see how the consumer is doing. And then, did I win today? And it's the series of wins that you're going to get is going to be that sustained. So just much like a Major League Baseball season, no one wins 162 games, but it's how many games you've won and making sure that you know what the score was on each of those to have that continued success.
Yeah, I guess all I would say, and actually it's probably pretty similar, which is I've kind of grown to believe that key to success over time is to be very rigorous in almost everything that you do. When you manage a business, whether it's the experiences you deliver, whether it's how you execute, whether it's the operations of your business, the financials of your business, the talent in your business, it's so critical that you have a rigorous mindset around how do you manage those areas. And in other words, you don't become so one-sided. You want to be multidimensional. You want to be balanced and really show appreciation for many of the capabilities that's required for an organization to be successful.
Okay, and we can move on to the next question. So the next question reads, what is the most critical difference in your approach to your style of work transitioning from military to civilian life?
Yeah, I'll start on this one. First of all, I think there's a lot that you learn in the military that directly applies to the civilian world, and particularly into consumer products. I think getting clear on the mission, everybody having clarity on the mission, being resilient, toughness, just knowing how to follow orders when they're given. I think that's valued, and just being highly disciplined. I think there's a view, maybe we get too much credit as military people when we come into a civilian organization. There's a presumption that you're very organized and disciplined and that you can follow orders, and generally that's true, right? Because we've all had to do that. But the thing that I think is a bit of a nuanced difference that can make a big difference in your success is around influencing through less hierarchy. Typical, the organizations are flatter, decisions are made faster, and being able to influence in a flatter organization, a lot of it through just empathetic leadership, listening, some of the things we've talked about before, is really being focused in that area around some of the softer skills around influencing will make the difference. But you should be very confident if you're still in the military and you're looking to get out and do something different. The skills you bring are highly desirable and super on point for what companies are looking for.
Rod, that's great. I would just, one piece of that, you've talked about a little bit of a transition or a change. In the military, it's often thought, it's a perception or is that we're very directive or prescriptive in the way that we operate. And I had the benefit of being hired by a West Point alum when I made my initial transition out of the military. And one of the things that he mentioned, and it was a great nuance, is that it's always we as we're influencing an organization. And he would always say in an email or a written communication or in a discussion that it's always we, even when we is I. So in corporate America, you're influencing continually in multiple groups, especially in an organization like PepsiCo that's so large. And often that approach, if it's too directive, you're going to run into some roadblocks. But if you can transition to a softer side of we, you're going to win.
Some great help as I was transitioning. My first company, General Mills, they had a battery of, I don't know if I call them personality tests or skill set tests that helped me understand my own behaviors and increase my emotional intelligence very rapidly. So whether it was the Myers-Briggs or the CARE model, it really helped me kind of frame how I was different and kind of what I brought from the military and maybe what my blind spots were because I hadn't been in corporate America. So I found those hugely helpful to just make sure that my EQ was, on par with my peers, having come from a very different background.
Okay, transitioning to our next question. Have you found a life coach or a professional advisor helpful towards your success in the civilian world?
Yeah, I can share. I guess the answer for me has been yes. I think over the course of my career, there have been advisors that have provided just that right insight at the time I needed it most for me to make that next leap in terms of my own professional development and career growth. One example that I think about a lot, I was running marketing for Best Buy, and I had an advisor who essentially said, you know, Greg, you're pretty set in your ways, and went on to talk to me about how do you actually get rid of bad habits and start new habits and actually start to really transform yourself. And the metaphor she used, and who was my coach, was think of your career as the game of golf. And in that game of golf, you think about all the things you have to learn how to do, how to manage the course, how to use different irons in your bag. How do you actually practice in adjusting your golf swing? And what that person did is start to relate that to how you apply it to your job. You know, how do you apply it to your job where you can start to connect concepts around changing your leadership that you've relied upon for perhaps decades, or certainly for many, many years. How do you start to evolve that? And a coach can help you find ways to relate to the opportunities that they see in front of you, the potential that is unrealized, and actually give you ways that resonate with you to make those micro adjustments or big adjustments. And there's a lot more that a coach can do, can help you just with your communication. It can help you think about how to distill your point of view around things. How do you unpack your thinking and make sure and reassemble it in a very persuasive, compelling way? We all need help. We're all work in progress. And I tell you, you know, I graduated in 1990. I'm still very much a work in progress. And I think coaches and mentors and advisors all play a very active and vital role in my development.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick and kind of build on what you were saying there, Greg. You know, it doesn't have to be a formal life coach. I can tell you, and you know, I can still remember key moments in my career, key moments, you know, inside and outside of work, of individuals that have spoken into my life, and so it also helps you outside of the workplace as well. But you know, really, it's finding those mentors that you can sit down and have a discussion with, and they can be raw to you, and you can be raw back in a discussion point. That they would have parts of, you know, how to carry yourself in a particular meeting, or how to recover from maybe a misstep that you've had, and those different things, as well as Greg mentioned how you message things and making sure that you're on point. And you know, much like any conversation you have, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that you're going to leave with the group before you step away, and keeping at that and keeping tight to that messaging has been a big help. But it's come from leaders in the organization that you know, I've sought out, you know, and so don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask for help, or ask for a lunch, or ask for a coffee with an individual on an informal standpoint, or have a more formal relationship versus a formal coach, but a relationship that you have ongoing, whether it be on a monthly or a periodic basis, that you continue that relationship with, that you can check back for progress and say, well, how did I do in this occurrence versus the previous? And then I would just, you know, the last thing is, it doesn't necessarily have to be within your 4 walls of your work or your office place. It could be for a place where you worship, where you go to church, or, you know, on a board that you sit on and seeing peers or others that have gone before you. And it can be within a not-for-profit board as well, that you could be, you know, where you're providing a service back to a community, much like the USO or in other organizations like that you could sit on their boards and be around folks that have a common background, and really that common bond that you have from the military to help edge you better in your career as you move forward.
Yeah, I'd just build on a couple of the points. Starts with feedback's a gift, right? If you have that mindset and you're open to making yourself better and being curious about like what is getting in the way of you being successful, it starts with that mindset and having it. My personal, I've got 3 vectors to my coaching, mentoring. One is just personal mentor network, people I've worked for and with over the years that I've respected and learned stuff from, staying in touch with them. And it could be the informal lunch, like Brett was saying, but just staying connected to them. My wife knows me really well, and she knows when I'm doing things that maybe could be done differently or better. And so there's a check there with her. And then I've got a professional advisory that I use. And at one point there was almost a stigma. If you were in the corporate world and you needed a coach, the view was, well, you had an issue, right, that you needed to deal with. It was a problem. And so the company would give you a coach. I think that's old school. And a lot of people now have coaches to help them be successful. Again, just whether it's a blind spot or helping you think through a really tough decision where maybe there's not a right or a wrong answer and it's in the gray and you got to get it right because it matters. This professional advisory coach piece is part of it. So those are the 3 vectors that I have. And I think we all have our own kind of math on kind of where we spend our time, but it's important to be open to feedback and then go get it.
So moving on to the next question, and this is a pretty interesting one. Which would you consider more important, certifications or a master's degree?
So I'll throw out an opinion on that. And I think the elder statesman here of the group, so I'm interested in other opinions. But for me, a master's degree was almost required for landing a role as a marketing professional, brand professional at one of the top CPG, consumer packaged goods companies. And so, for me, that was the transition to help me take my skill set that was based in the military, all very, very relevant, but also to add the skill set that marketing and all of the different pieces of the MBA were able to layer on top. And it also gave me the confidence that I had what it took. I obviously still had a ton of learning to do, but I had the basic skill set. And I found that companies recruited at specific schools. So, for example, I went to UCLA, and so there was, a group of 10 or so CPGs that would recruit every year there. And so we kind of were their pipeline. So if you're considering getting an MBA, even checking with the school to see who recruits there so that you know where will you have a very easy path for getting to know recruiters and kind of getting your name and resume out there is an important step in choosing a program if you were to go the MBA route.
I guess I'll pile on. I did not, I took the road certainly less traveled. My first I started out in brand management at Kraft Foods. And Kraft Foods at the time had they called it a JMO program, Junior Military Officer Program. And there were 4 of us. In the first year out of the military, I served 5 years. I transitioned out of the military. And at Kraft Foods, they hired 4 of us out of 28, us meaning the Academy grads. I was in the Air Force. There were 2 West Point and Naval Academy grad. We went into the as an assistant brand manager, and a number of us along the way of the 4 took different paths to trying to figure out, did you want to do a nighttime MBA, an executive MBA? Did you just want to continue to try to just pretty much on the job training? One of the guys now is West Point grad. He's the CEO at SoFi, Anthony Noto. He went to Wharton at night as he was at General Mills. That's what he ended up doing. I was at Kraft Foods. And I actually ended up moving on to a couple of companies and kind of just really focused more on making an impact and then having more targeted education around certain topics, but did not get my MBA. And I think I kind of regretted it for a big portion of my career. I always felt like I took a shortcut in a sense. However, when I look back at my career and what happened with it, ultimately, I experienced a lot of success, and a lot was built on the shoulders of the academy experiences, plus the training I got from the companies that I worked on. So I don't know if there's a single right answer. It's a tough question. I'm not sure if I got it right. I'm not sure if there's the right answer for anybody. However, that's what I did. And, things work out. Bet on yourself. Work hard. Think about your full potential. Learn from every interaction you have with other people. Those kind of things are going to be key to your success, regardless of what path you end up choosing.
Thank you for the insight. And this is going to be our last question. And so it reads, what advice would you give someone transitioning into a career after their time in the uniform? And why did you decide on the career you chose?
Okay, stab at this one first, Josh. I'll start with the back end of the question first, and then kind of go into some of the advice piece. And it says, why did you decide on the career you chose? And I actually will go back to our senior year at the academy when we're choosing AFSCs. I was non-PQ, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to fly due to my eyes. So I asked a very sarcastic, firsty question to myself and to others around, and said, well, then how can I still be close to the aircraft? I had a helicopter pilot management DFM advisor that keenly said, well, you can be a cop or a maintenance officer. They both work on the flight line. And I kind of chuckled and said, well, what's maintenance do? And that's how I got into supply chain operations, is truly as a sarcastic firstie at the academy, by choosing to not be a cop. And for those that are cops, thank you for your service and your continued service. But that's how I got into supply chain operations. And then, advice as you're making that transition from whatever career field you are in, is one of the biggest questions. Is I've mentored dozens of folks making this transition over the years, is they question or try to make their activities and those things that they're doing at work, how do they translate them to the civilian world? Or they have a question of what is the civilian world? And I would just caution you and say, well, it's much like the Air Force. It is, within a large organization like PepsiCo, we have HR, which is just like personnel. We have transportation leaders. We have security leaders. We have procurement and acquisition leaders. We have legal leaders. We have all the different things that we have in the Air Force that are directly translatable. And then as a maintenance officer, it's identical to plant operations or distribution. You have people that you're leading. And the one common element in all those things, if you didn't catch it, is leaders. And that is the biggest asset you have as a service member, is your leadership. And that's what's going to make you successful in your career, is bringing that leadership with you to the workplace. But I would ask you, where did you perform the best on your OPR when you're writing those funky bullets? And you said not the activity you did, but what was the result you got, and where did you enjoy that result the most? Because that's where you're going to find your success as you make a transition, whether it's in marketing or sales or supply chain operations. You're going to succeed where you enjoy getting results, and make that kind of your piece. And the leadership that you already have is going to make you successful in whatever career that you choose.
If I can follow Brett on that, I had exactly the same where Brett ended there. The advice I would give: find your passion. Like what do you love doing, and what are you good at? Typically the same thing. There's a big overlap there. What is it? And go do that. Like don't look for something that's just big because it is, or something that's got a flashy name or it's hot tech out in California right now. If that's your passion, go for it. If it's not, well, don't, because you're typically not going to have as much success. And my version of that was I always wanted to do something financial. Loved my time at the academy, and my time there, I was in the management department. Katie and I were joking. I actually chose it. Like I didn't just land there because I couldn't like hang in Aero or Astro or something. I chose it because it was the most fun. It was that or econ, right, for me in terms of what I was interested in. And then I went into systems acquisition, right? It was the most business side of the Air Force, if you will, where I thought I could add value. And I went on to go into corporate finance and be a public company CFO that then, worked its way into the CEO spot. So that's my version of it and how I got started.
I'll build on that since you referenced, Rod, that you and I both, we didn't drop down to management. We actually wanted it. So, and very similarly, I was a systems acquisition officer. I was a 2-7. And what I learned as a 2-7 was that part of my role was telling a story. It was telling a story to those who funded things about why the directed energy weapon that we wanted to fund was worth funding. And so that art of storytelling and what is salient and what is just a bunch of numbers and who cares, that really fascinated me, and that kind of way of influencing through storytelling. And so when then I looked to say, well, what is that in the civilian world? That was brand. That was telling the brand story and knowing what the salient points are and having the insights about what about your message will resonate. So that passion for storytelling is really kind of the arc for me across my career. And so I absolutely agree 100% with everyone else that it has to be something you're passionate about. The number of hours you spend, like luckily, it doesn't feel like work. I mean, some of it feels like work, but a lot of it is just my brain having fun, thinking about the brand and how to make it better and different. And so when it's that kind of much of a passion, then you found your mark.
One thing I would just add a little bit is I was so inspired by the paths others had chosen. And, that idea of just the network that you're a part of, and extends beyond the Air Force and the Air Force Academy. It extends all the way across, I would say, all the military branches. And you'll see people that have just been tremendously successful in all walks of life, in different companies, that actually can serve as a little bit of a source of inspiration for you. When I got out of the military, by the way, I was a ACO, Administrative Contract Officer, and when I got out, I thought I wanted to go to law school, and ultimately, though, I met some people that had gone to packaged goods, and I kind of never really thought about it as a goal. But then as I talked to them and I saw their successes, it was like, oh, I get this. I understand I can be successful in this kind of environment. And so the thing that inspired me most was the path of others. And so that's something I would also, I don't know it always gives you the right answer, but it does provide you maybe a broader perspective of the opportunities that are in front of you. You don't become so myopic in the way you think about your career. You actually can open your eyes and realize that there's so many people out there doing fun, exciting, and impactful things that you can learn from and actually potentially even follow.
Well, that was the last question. So I just wanted to say thank you to the other panelists, and I want to thank the AOG and the Air Force Academy Foundation once more for allowing us to have this panel. And thank you all for attending our virtual panel. And lastly, thank the panelists for your time with us tonight. This concludes our virtual event, and have a good evening.